So 2-0 on the season while the Chiefs are looking for their first win. It's the first time these teams will face off since the 40-22 blowout, which wasn't even that close, and saw Jalen Hurts and company capture their second Super Bowl in franchise history. So, Mad Dog, what is the bigger deal for the Chiefs? Is it avoiding 0-2 or beating Philly after that horrible Super Bowl performance?
I think the way the Chiefs lost, and that was the best game I've ever seen Herbert play, by the way, in Sao
Brazil.
Oh, he played great, and that was important for him. The fact that they lost that first game, to me, puts last year's Super Bowl in its rearview mirror. They need to win the game. Denver won, Chargers won, Raiders won. They got a tough schedule. Chiefs have a lot of weapons. You know, Kelsey I know he scored a touchdown, but he didn't do a whole ton. Their defense couldn't stop Herbert. 3rd and 14 to scramble for the first down. So to me, this game is really more about the Chiefs just getting back on the winning track. You know, I understand they got killed in the Super Bowl. That was their prideful team. I get that. But this is not the Chiefs Vikings in 1970. The Vikings beat the Chiefs. Don't look at me that way.
I know.
You two over there.
Don't
look at me that way.
We weren't born.
Years later.
Anyway,
we weren't born then.
The Chiefs upset the Vikings in the
Very
Super Bowl
young.
4, and then they played the next year in Week 1, and Minnesota killed them to get back at the Super Bowl. This is not that kind of situation. Because I think the Chiefs, they need to really win the game more than going out there and getting a little revenge on the Eagles. So I think it's more about this year than last year.
Stephen A.?
You know what? It's appropriate this week to use a boxing analogy since I'll be out in Vegas for this big fight this weekend between Canelo Alvarez and Terrence Crawford. Let me tell y'all something. One of the all-time, what's the greatest first round in boxing we ever saw? It probably is Tommy the Hitman Hearns against Marvin Hagler. Okay? Yep. Now, obviously, he lost it. Now, obviously, he lost that fight. But what an epic first round before he got put out in the 3rd round. But what an epic fight it was. And primarily because of that first round, right? I'm bringing up that analogy, Swagoo and Doggy, is because there is a difference between getting knocked out and getting your ass kicked.
True.
You understand? If you watch Terrence Crawford over a year ago against Errol Spence, Swagoo, you saw his face. I mean, you had people that didn't even. I mean, they were talking about how he should retire.
Yep.
It was that kind of ass kicking. No, he's a wonderful, wonderful guy. I ain't throwing no shade on him, but my God, it was a beatdown. Okay. That's what happened to the Kansas City Chiefs in the Super Bowl. We got to put this stuff in perspective. One could argue that to some degree they're punch drunk. I'm not worried about them if they were 0-2 because they got Patrick Mahomes. It's the regular season. And I know the AFC West ain't what it once was. The Chargers and the Broncos are something to contend with. And the Raiders can't be slept on with Pete Carroll there now as well. We get that part. But the Chiefs are still the Chiefs. And it's hard to imagine that they're not going to be good enough to get to the playoffs, no matter what their record is after 2 weeks, whether it's 1-1 or 0-2. We got that part. But the reason why it's important to show up against the Eagles is because they whipped your ass. And I mean, it was a really bad ass whipping. When you don't pass midfield until the 3rd quarter, when your first 9 drives are a bunch of punts, you understand, and 3 and outs and interceptions, when you're down 24-0 at the half, when Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce are seen on the bench looking like this and just shaking their head and talking to each other about how, Lord, this is bad, in the 3rd quarter of a Super Bowl, that's bad. The residual impact of that, to me, Swagoo, is what resonates because I'm thinking other opponents see that and they're going like this. If we could just do this, we could get him. Mm-hmm. If we could just do that, we could get him. And in this case, it's rushing 4, 7 back in the coverage, not blitzing at all, okay, and still dominating. Of course, that's what it takes. Everybody can't do that. But to see that happen to the Chiefs, their aura of invincibility has evaporated in my estimation. And that is why I think them showing up against the Eagles is important. It's not because of the record. You got to show you can punch back, and you ain't going down like that.
That's an interesting point.
That's what you got to do.
Do you feel like teams are less fearful now of the Chiefs because they've seen some vulnerability?
100%. You know what disappointed me more than anything about that Chargers game? I didn't feel like the Chiefs had any dog in them. I felt like they just felt like, well, eventually Pat will make a play and we'll be able to win this game. And I think that's part of the issue with Kansas City right now is they got to stop living off that a little bit and become – because here's what people don't acknowledge because we've been so punch drunk over the greatness of Patrick Mahomes that this team was really built on being a physical football team. If you think about the Super Bowls that they won, the running backs could have been the MVPs of those games. The offensive line, defensive line. The first time we saw them get destroyed was against Tampa Bay, and it was because the offensive line wasn't really good.
Yep, got
The
killed.
following year, they go revamp the offensive line. They get back to some physicality, win the Super Bowl. The last time we saw them on the football field, before this season started, they were getting destroyed on the offensive line. I didn't feel like, and I felt like that season after Tampa, within Kansas City's building, there was a feeling of we got to go get our get back. And I didn't see that against the Chargers. It felt like the Chargers kind of knew that this is not the same Kansas City Chiefs that we've been playing against. And look, they've had the Chargers have had this revamp of energy from Harbaugh. They want to be a physical football team. They leaning into Justin Herbert. Greg Roman is there now, who came from Baltimore, who's been able to run the football on everybody. And they had a tremendous amount of success. I think Kansas City has to get their stinger back. I think a little bit of it is gone. That's why, like, I would love to go against Stephen A. on that, but I'm in that lane with him about their stinger. It just don't feel like when they take the field that they want people to fear them. And I used to feel like that about Kansas City. Now it's about what Patrick Mahomes can do more so than playing the Kansas City Chiefs as a whole.
Swag, doggy. Let me just throw, I mean, because I know I've said it to other people, but I've never said it to both of y'all on the show together. Let me just run down a little short list for y'all to hold on to for this season when I bring up Punch Drunk and the Kansas City Chiefs. Fully expecting them to make the playoffs, but seeing some vulnerabilities. Didn't pass midfield until the last few minutes of the third quarter. First 9 drives of the first 9 drives of the Super Bowl into the third quarter. 6 punts, 2 interceptions, 1 turnover on downs. They became the first team all season long, regular season or postseason last year, where the offense didn't run a single play in their opponent's territory in their first 9 drives. 12 of Kansas City's 13 offensive drives went for 5 or fewer plays. No drive exceeded 4 plays in the entire first half. And Patrick Mahomes was sacked a career high 6 times, and the Eagles didn't blitz once the entire Super Bowl. Ladies and gentlemen, that is an ass kicking. That is a beatdown. And when you see someone as great as Patrick Mahomes, as great as Andy Reid, as great as Travis Kelce is, regardless of how he looked last year to some degree, he's still Travis Kelce, damn it. When you see people that great, that humble, it doesn't just go away.
Yeah, that's true.
It doesn't.
Absolutely. The Eagles are going to have one of their stingers back that they didn't have last week, because Jalen Carter will not miss any future games for spitting.
Because guess what? If this penalty had come down, maybe I would feel differently if the penalty had come down immediately. But since they just announced it, and you brought up what you just brought up that happened in college, doggy, then you got cats out there mimicking stuff. We're talking about role models, right? We're talking about making sure that behavior ain't emulated, right? We're talking about making sure that you understand the severe ramifications that come with such a heinous, disgusting act like spitting on somebody, right? Guess what? Another game ain't no problem to suspending that guy. And that man for Florida, he should be suspended multiple games too.
Listen, you remember years ago, like a lot of years ago, you like to go back in the past. Bill Romanowski did this.
Oh, I know. I don't like him either.
And it was like, you've heard me say this before too, Molly. There's a code that we all really supposed to live by in the league. We don't have to like each other. We don't have to be the best of friends. But this is one of those off-limit things that's supposed to be understood within the league, right? Within the NFL. It's a lot that goes on out there. It's a lot of talking. We talk about your mama, your dog, your sister. It's a lot of that going on. And everybody understands that comes with the territory. I was on last week after Jalen Carter did this, and it was stupid. It's immature. And his maturity is always the part for me that comes into question. Like, when are you going to get to the point where you realize that the world is your oyster right now, young